Record to this computer.
It's just the 29th.
Great. Ooh. Also, follow up to last week. I didn't post the recording from last time because I feel like we looked at something initially that was confidential. Now I can't even remember, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. But we created an issue last week, and then that got ended up getting picked up by the team that owns Reviewer Roulette. So we we added value even if it wasn't through writing code, just through writing English.
That is
Um,
even better. I mean, isn't that the goal of us to write English stuff to have AI to do it for us?
well, in
Um,
this case, it was not AI, but okay, sure.
that's fair.
Okay, so this is the
So this is a
AI
draft.
gateway. Okay, let me
So
put that
this
in the
is
docs.
caching
Okay.
and restrict prompt caching for self-hosted models. That's the goal. So
Restrict. Okay, can we look at the issue quickly since I've never seen it before? We can look at it
yes.
together as
So
we.
the initial issue is Anthropic allows us to cache prompts
System prompts,
specifically.
right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Or sorry, yeah, messages like conversational roles with basically modifying the message input that we send as a request to Anthropic. And the change is pretty small, where basically we're appending teach system message, this key value pair of cache control type of ephemeral. And
Mm,
since we're only it one of the requirements is it needs to be a certain number of tokens large, like the conversation, to actually evaluate the cache, or to to write to the cache. The goal was to test this specifically for Duo Chat. Um,
question. Because in this issue it says it's only for the system prompt, and that was also my understanding of how Anthropic caching worked. Are you saying that this is for caching also user input?
just the system prompt.
Okay, so the system prompt is the sufficient size to.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Got it.
You can also cache tools too. So
Hmm.
this cache control can be used for tools and for the system prompt.
Makes
You can
sense.
actually add it in a couple other, like one other location, but those are the two recommended um, suggestions. So
Okay.
this was enabled in staging, but turns out self-hosted models also call the V2 chat agent. And so
Ah,
for the Mistral agent, we need to restrict. So basically, for any self-hosted model that's not Anthropic, we need to
uh-huh.
restrict this process. So
Ooh, got it. And by restrict, you mean do not cache.
do not
Skip caching.
cache.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
skip the appending to the message.
Got it.
And this basically, if we want to go, we'll mention work in progress. Oh, that. Okay, so this is what this MR is doing. And if we want to go really quickly to the change, at least right now,
Hmm.
is this is relying on, which we do a lot in the A gateway, is dependency injection. And this is basically the idea of very much like in Java, passing in and in basically reducing object calls within your application and inserting, not having as being as verbose, well, as as large of a function call. If you have multiple dependencies everywhere, you can inject an object with the specific um, uh, data associated. So currently, if we go, we have this. We can use the provider and this. Um, we can use this dependency, which is the dependent providers, which we basically inject um, whether this certain value is done. And we can
Yeah, can you
enable
show
those.
me? You're gonna show me providers.
Yes. So here are these base classes
Cool.
in the override provider. And if we go to the custom models, it currently has determined whether it's enabled or disabled for streaming.
Can you
Um,
show me where providers is defined?
yeah,
Because
providers is
we're,
actually,
yeah.
yeah, let me just go to my React. Go to the end.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
actually its own,
Oh
this is
wait,
its
I
own
just
like
saw it up
definition.
there. Capital, you've scrolled past it.
Um,
Providers. It was in this file. You just scrolled past it. No,
oops.
I think it was capital P providers. Oh no. Oh, I thought it was, I mean, it's provider. I don't know. Okay. So sorry. Again, to show me where it's defined.
So yeah, this is defined, it's its own dependency. So we actually override what is in as a provider, what's injected as providers is this in configuration file, which basically is a bunch of these classes that, we have as variables for our application that we want to pass along to different classes. So an example is like a JWT, a validation key, config fast API. I have no idea what this does.
Yeah.
Our
So where,
snowplow.
but where precisely is providers? Like, this is a genuine question. I'm not trying to like
Yeah, this
be
is
a
also.
Socratic method here.
I'm also. This is. I sort of wanted to pair on this one, partly because this is also a pair in Python of like where are things being added.
Totally.
So yeah,
Okay. So
where
you're
is
not sure yet, it sounds like.
that is the answer. Yeah, I'm
Cool.
not exactly sure.
Okay.
From my understanding, this is. I've gone off of another. Um, let's get out of here.
hmm
I don't exactly know.
Mm.
The question is like if we, curl this endpoint with expanded logging, this is kind of how I've gone about looking at this is we can go to our where we're actually called this and set a debugger and and run basically this curl request. I don't know if I'm actually running uh, poetry shell. Oops. Let's close this out. Sometimes poetry is odd. Am I running this somewhere else?
You were in the GitLab project, not in the AI Gateway project, just there. It says it could not
Thank you.
find it in GDK/GitLab.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Let's see if there's any dependencies that it needs to install. Nope.
So you're running it. You're not running it with GDK? Or like
Uh,
why is
some
it being run this way?
Sometimes I run into issues where I'm actually having two projects that have two different like poetry dependencies, and it sometimes gets into like configuration problems.
Mm.
Also, for setting debug points, it doesn't do the best when trying to trace this and
Mm.
see our logs. So I found that sometimes if I really need to test it, I guess with a little bit more logging and different with different debugging points, I will just run it independently outside of the JDK. I've also
Okay.
noticed that's other people do the same. So I will tag you on a Slack a thread that I added for this. Outside of that other good point, um, basically can hit this, and right now, let's see, yeah, it's requesting to the V2 chat agent, resolves the prompt ID. and then basically passes in the system prompt that's associated with the React agent, which is a bunch of tools and telling us, hey, please retrieve or do whatever action for this, which is, hi, how are you? And if we want to see what is in the provider config, which is what I'm actually very curious,
Mm-hmm.
is it's injecting with from the configuration. And this is now, well, what the heck is in this config? And where do we define this? And that's kind of where the providers and understanding dependency injection is kind of coming into point. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think, at least from my knowledge of this, is each service, like the AI gateway, has a container with a bunch of different objects and um, conf- basically data passed from our configuration file, which is here. So for this one, this is our React container or application. And this is how it does this wiring for dependency injections, where we basically list the modules. So we have our chat, and these are the API layer. The chat, X-ray, code completion, server monitoring, um, and our chat agent. And then here we have a inner singleton pattern here, and this is kind of the provider container has assigned a configuration variable, which is like snowplow, whatever snowplow is, here in the gateway that then loads from this base config, which I think stores all our information that we actually care about. So for here, I guess we have Amazon Q, internal events, instrumenters, and I think the part that I'm getting at is I would like to see what the heck is being assigned into this provider config, which right now I'm
Mm-hmm.
just seeing like I would like to see variables and data to backtrace on maybe what the heck is going on.
Or like
So
a type, right? Like what type is this provider? Is it a list? Is it
that is good. Let's see, type of provider config. Right now it's just saying it's a dependency injector provider configuration, which I have no idea how helpful that is.
well, and like what is providers, right? Because providers are configuration, sure. But like what is providers?
I think that gives us, let's go to the documentation. All right.
Nice. Look at us
Wait, what is
learning.
this is definitely learning. Okay. Let's see.
Okay, so
This
this is like an abstract callable. Okay. Interesting verbiage.
I
Okay.
feel like sometimes when they add that, it leaves me less clear of what we're actually getting. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm learning here is that providers, I was thinking because, there's LLM providers, that providers was like something that we had defined in our application.
oh,
And now at least it's obvious that providers is actually like a generic dependency injection concept.
yes.
Okay. Got it, got it, got it. So this is like already available. This is defined somewhere in the library. And
Yes. So it
providers have
retrieves the
this.
underlining objects into the created
Okay.
object.
Got it. Okay.
So the created object, let's see, let's go to an example, just as a passing out like
Factory, and we like you showed me we're using singleton providers. We're also using factory providers, right?
Yep.
Okay, great. And then
And
container
this,
providers on the left here, right? In container.py,
yeah.
provider.container. Mm-hmm.
This and specifically each, and this is from my understanding of this, each um React just container. React, let's go chat that container. To be super specific, it's ideally each service should have its own declared container, which lists the
Mhm.
dependencies you want to. So for this one, prompts, models, internal events, and the config, which is basically just this large list of variables that we can pass as a configuration file. So if I want a
Mm.
separate one to do for like logging, I don't know, I guess port information, I
Mhm.
could create that and could inject it into the React containers dependencies. Though the one thing, and like in a good example of this one is like this one that was added a while ago, which is this Duo Tools chat registry. It We're adjusting how we want the factory to work to constantly provide this initialization, like uh, parameter when we initialize it, whether the custom models is enabled. So in this example, we can, if it's enabled, we can append self-hosted GitLab documentation instead of just the.
Mm.
So knowing at least just the very basics of how dependency injection works,
Mhm.
I'm now like, okay, well, I know for one that we are having like the configuration file that we have for the React container has these classes, and I could access that. Now the question is, do I need to
Mm.
adjust the container to um, add to how I initialize the React class? And I don't think that's the case because the inputs that are associated to the React inputs is just like data the user can pass in from a request. And the example is
Mm. Mhm.
messages, the scratch pad, like model metadata,
Mhm.
tools. Even this one that Leslie added is like whether they want it to be concise or the
Mhm.
current date. Um, I think for right now, I don't want to mess with the actual input. I just
Yeah.
need to know whether we can enable in this container custom models, and whether I can then,
Mm.
check to see if the feature flag is enabled. Then I can add
Mm.
this and there. So
Okay. Well, question though. So
great.
you already told me at the beginning of this conversation that you know, so it looks like there is a feature flag. So there's two conditions that need to be true if you want to do prompt caching. One is the feature flag needs to be enabled, which is the check on line 162 that you're looking at right here. The
Yep.
second is that we want to know that they're using Claude, right? Like it is self-hosted, but really it's just that this is like an Anthropic API option that we assume there's no like, you know, common API for this across models. So if they're using Anthropic, we definitely want to do this, right? Because nobody is anybody using self-hosted Anthropic, or is that like a concern?
Yeah, they can use custom models. So they can use self-hosted Anthropic with a different provider.
With
So,
a
and we can
different
go.
provider. Oh, like Google, like you can host your Vertex model, or not Vertex models, but your cloud models on Vertex, right?
Yes, you can. I
Which
don't
is
think,
confusing.
at least from my understanding, and this is trying to, is we do allow people to have, let's say, an example is we go to this prompt, which is
Mm-hmm.
troubleshoot. And
Hmm.
right now we're providing a Claude model,
Hmm.
um, but different provider. So
I
Light
see.
LLM. And their Light LLM, unfortunately, has different ways of measuring uh, prompt caching than Anthropic. It's just a different process.
Mm. Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
kind of keeping this in track is there's a few like different areas, like even for their, cache tokens, which is the next one is to measure the right tokens. This is different than what Anthropic only does, which is provides
Mm.
there. So I think the most generic solution is to just say, and I think this is where I misspoke, is like, yes, we only want to do it for anthropic models, but in reality, we should just do this only for non-self-hosted, um,
Mhm.
since mostly relying on anthropic. So that was kind of the impetus. So instead of checking in the inputs, like what model is being used, which the user doesn't do, we do it at the prompt registry level at this point, which is a lot simpler. If we go to registry.py, we take this YAML file and YAML and basically parse out the information that's associated in this dictionary or in this, YAML file. If that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. So, uh, yeah, I guess if you show me where you're going to hook in, I understand conceptually where you're going with this. Um,
Yeah.
but
So
I
I
want to see
think
it.
the circle around is don't just enable and only ignore this prompt caching for all um, self-hosted models. That's even though we can probably just look at the model name, there's like a slight deviation. So I think
Uh-huh,
just the
uh-huh.
simplest way to do it is to disable it for custom models. Also to be safe for self-hosted information. So I think for right now, I think this looks pretty decent. And I was actually test doing some test driven design to try
Mhm.
to like, figure out, well, okay, what's going on. So in this, I have a fixture, which basically passing in this new parameter, whether it's or argument, whether it's custom models enabled. And since I know that from this config that this is all right, this is the variable that I want to actually set. I'm going to be like,
Um,
okay, the configuration has a config file with custom models
and then custom model.
enabled.
Okay, custom model. Oh, on the left it's custom models, and you have custom models enabled. Oh, custom models dot enabled is on 77. Okay.
Yeah. It's a slightly different. I guess should just say enabled and
Okay.
then enabled. Okay. And then down in this test message cache control, I'm
Mhm.
providing in this argument basically parameterized test with the feature flag enabled and let's say
Mhm.
custom models uh, flag enabled. Let's rename it. And then okay, and basically every condition, and I would like to see whether this is done. So basically, first setup if the context
Um,
has enabled cache there. Otherwise, I set it
okay.
to an empty list, and then
And now
basically
327 is wrong. Sorry, just to pair on you. Right. You just changed 325 and now 327 needs to be changed.
327. I don't. It's 327 is the
Oh,
feature flag.
Oh, what is the custom model flag? What is a custom model flag?
That's just the fixture variable that I would
What
be
does that
passing
fixture
it.
what does that represent? What does a
Yes,
fixture represent?
a fixture represents just a a date like if it's going to call, it's a mock of basically effectively a mock that says um if I call this, I don't know, function, that I will perform the fixture representation of that. So, like, if I were to call set uh, this very method, instead I would be calling the method that I am representing as a
Hmm.
fixture.
So
Like for this
maybe
one,
it's configuration is the word. So maybe you want to say mock custom models config. custom models config, and then instead of calling it a flag, you want to call it config. Just so those two concepts are getting a little jumbled for me. But I
Okay.
think you know what you're doing, but just like as a second person, I'm like, what? We have flags, we have flags.
That's fair. So
So now you want
this
to
is going to be
change
our
the
mock.
reference to mock config, which you had somewhere.
I need to pass it down actually. So I was testing this out, which is not there. So I
Mm.
actually need to pass in config.
Mm.
And then in this, I would mock config dot, and this is where I'm kind of getting into the weeds. So here I've set up the feature flag. Let's go back to my application code. Here I set the feature flag. It's context, which is what this check does, is feature flag enabled.
Hmm.
Um, it's if I do pass in as the parameterized variable, it's true. It sets that, and then I set up a basic input for the React agent, which is what we're going to call here. Um,
Where's here? Right.
here is in my terminal
Oh, okay.
pull request. So this is basically the inputs directly associated with this. And then
Hmm.
I'm going to call the invoke, which is what I want to test.
Okay. And then what
And
do we expect to come back to us?
yes, here in the prompt value in each of these, like if I were to go continue, um, when it streams, the prompt value, sorry, this whole section from the request to the LLM, this large thing that should
Hmm.
eventually have, we go back to the issue, um, or the original issue, it should have the system cache control added. So that's how I know whether this is correctly done.
Okay. So
And
you're looking
it's
for that right now.
mhm. And
Okay.
that message will be the system message specifically,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is another base class provided by LangChain, which allows us to quickly add content and other things that are shared among different LLM providers. So kind of just abstracts the idea of a system message.
Hmm.
So here, this is where I believe I will want to take the mock custom models config and assert it's been called with um, the custom models enabled
Hmm.
parameterized variable. So that's what I would like to know. And then I would like to know that this mock config.custom models return value is that
Hmm.
when it returns here,
Hmm.
that the value is false. And the only time this block should ever be hit is when this is true and this is um, this is false. So we're not using a self-hosted model, and the feature flag is enabled.
Hmm. Um, Also, can I ask a question about 347?
Yeah.
Custom model flag enabled. I saw that that was above in this test.
Hmm.
Okay.
It's kind of weird. These like tuples are
Oh, I
are
see. Oh, I see. So it's a test specific. I would really encourage you to rename custom model flag enabled to be like custom models enabled or something, because flag and flag is a little confusing. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's helpful. Good.
and I think for this one we need to update this because I think the fixture needs to have explicitly the same.
In the same
Um,
name. That makes
yeah.
sense.
Okay.
And then there was one more reference to it that I don't think you changed. Did you do like a
Uh,
find and replace all in the file?
yeah. There we go. Custom models enabled. It was
Oh, I think it was originally custom model flag. So you want to look for places where you didn't change custom mod was it model or models
Let me just
flag?
see what it was. Oops.
Well, flag. The word you didn't type in the word. Oh, there, I see. Okay.
All right, it's the only
Oh, I
one.
see. Model table.
Great.
Great.
All right, so let's run it. Let's see what happens, and go from there.
Big moment.
Uh, let's see. What's a good way to do it? I think let's go run through here. I like doing this because it's just simple. Let me clear this out
I was
too.
going to ask what that red thing was. That means that the test failed last time.
Yep. hmm
Okay, cool. Let's look at the
So
failure.
let's.
Attribute
This
error,
is
custom models.
this is the setup that I'm actually curious. Attribute array, custom models. So it doesn't look like there's in the config. There's an item called custom models.
In
Okay.
which config? And the
The
test or the real?
If you're looking at the self in this AI gateway config, which is let's see here,
Uh-huh.
it looks like the item custom models isn't correct. So let's go to that config.
Oh yeah, it looks like you have it open in both panes. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Custom models.
So it looks like there is an item called custom models. Now, why is it not able to get the attribute?
Hmm. Custom models. Is it on config or is it in something else?
It should be on config.
Okay. Well, you're not in the file anymore, so I guess we can't see.
All right.
Um, you had it. Oh, there now. Yeah, you're right. It does look like it's there. Config custom models. So how do you think you should go about debugging this?
Well, one, I like to see another example. So
Mm.
I'm gonna go do the very lame way of going to a different tab.
Mhm.
Let's see. Custom models. Mock custom
Ah.
models. Oh, that's mine. All right, let's see. All right, let's see how they set up there. So custom
Config equals
models.
config. Did you do that in yours? Did you set it? Can we do a split screen of yours versus this one?
Yep. Oops, I'm now going to there. Let's close this.
It's too many splits.
Sometimes splitting screens is slow. All
Yeah.
right.
Okay, so
Let's,
config equals config. I noticed on yours that there's no parentheses after config on line 76. Do you think that matters?
then throw in some six, no parentheses. Let's try it. Let's see. Maybe it didn't instantialize the object. All right.
Yeah, you'd think that it would like throw a syntax error if that mattered, but
Knowing
I think that
Python, yeah. Make- All right. Great. So
different
you're right.
error? Cool.
Now we're now at the breakpoint. So,
Yay, Nathan.
all right, let's see. Continue. All right, so this is weird. Whenever it hits the breakpoint when running this, it doesn't actually finish. So, oh gosh. That's
Where's the
why I
break
like to.
point?
Uh, if we go back to the test results, I was always very curious. Like, it says it's hit a breakpoint here at React.
Mhm.
Correct. Okay, but I don't know how to interact with this panel, which is the
Mm.
intriguing part. So I might just rerun those tests and then just exclude this. And then if I really need to, I will. Let me stop.
A debugger statement. Yeah, I think I saw Tatiana or somebody asking previously about like the best debugger tools in Python, but I don't remember what the answers were. It was sometime.
I normally just to write like running this given class with PyTest, which does the same thing as our spec. Oops.
Yeah, but is that for debugger for a debug point? I was
Uh,
referencing like the idea that you're trying to set a debug point there.
yeah, you can. It will hit a debug point, and then you can interact with it in your terminal.
Oh, I thought you were saying that you couldn't figure out how to do that.
That's mostly just if I run this test results. For some reason, it oddly, it just doesn't this is where it gets odd.
Oh, and test results. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with this aspect of
It makes
VS Code.
test. Oops, nope, I don't want to do make test with this
You are
thing.
in GitLab, I think. Do
Thank you.
PWD, yeah.
It's odd, really odd because it shows the um, virtual
Mm,
environment, but it doesn't actually show. Okay.
yeah.
All right. Approach
Now you can
control.
clean up your command line so that it's a little easier to read. I find that helps a lot. Like where it actually just it only shows the current project. Get into some
Okay.
fun shell scripting. Okay.
That actually would be very valuable for me right now because right now one with the
Oh yeah.
Rails console added, and then
Hmm.
another one with running that poach pipe. It just ends up becoming a lot.
Yeah, yeah, you've got a lot to handle here.
All right, let me test. All right, so actually, I think I can make this
Hmm.
simplified. If I just do test or command R PyTest test. Okay, yeah, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so it failed on four different things. Config object has no attribute. Did I undo
Assert
that?
called with. Cool. What has no
Okay.
attribute assert called with?
Yeah, I'm wondering if I messed up and I undid the change we just did. Nope. Okay.
No, because well, this is a different error, right? Before the error was it no undefined attribute custom models
Oh,
enabled, and now it's finding that on config, but now you're calling assert called with. Which line are you calling that on?
that is, I'm trying to assert the mock was called with our
Oh,
custom models enabled.
so
Added.
maybe it's not being. I would go back to comparing our mock and the other one side by side and see if there are any other differences. Do you still have that split somewhere?
Yep. Hmm.
Whoa, is this a different screen?
I just opened up. It's the Open Editors tab,
Oh,
which
I
shows you
see.
all your active
Whoa.
editors.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay. We got a lot
Different
going on here.
Vim tracing versus or Vim navigation versus just going and seeing there. Okay, so the let's see, it was in this mock container.
Yep. And then if you look at ours on the right and the right split, where is that defined? Mo- No,
The
you already have it on the
this
left, but you want to see where we defined it on the right, right?
Yep. We call
Mm,
it something different. We call it
I would just look for maybe Oh, yeah. Okay. So let's compare them side by side. Custom models enabled. That looks good. Now let's look at where this mock config is called on the left. That's what you're already doing. You're one step ahead of me.
yeah. Right now this is now becomes the Python magic that I think is a little bit confusing because it
Okay.
mocks the config, and this is for a test container.
Uh-huh.
And then basically we have a parameterized test,
Mm-hmm.
which some variable. Okay, that's
Mm-hmm.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
And now I guess like where is this testing that the config or the mock was called? That not exactly sure. This is now saying there's some factory objects, like this
Mm-hmm.
one is an anthropic model factory, and it's asserting that it's called with either an LLM, chat, and the same model, or it's called with the light LLM chat model, or
Yeah.
the remote executor. Um,
Well, it looks like that test you're just looking at. If you go to the line where it's the def line. So if you just scroll up a tiny bit, there you go. So test container. So in this parameterized test, custom models enabled is false. So it's asserting that basically Claude is being used for when custom models is not enabled. And then the test below that. as custom models enable set to true on line 49, right?
hmm Uh,
And
this is
then,
this test is really odd. Well, I think the naming could be better because this is actually testing if custom models enabled what tool type we're using. Um, and that was
mhm.
the let's see, chat says container. Yeah, this Duo Chat Tools registry. Oops. So it's testing it with, I guess, container with config. So I guess that makes sense to me.
Okay.
And then there are two different tool types.
So it looks like it doesn't really call that mock directly. It's just kind of assumed that that's part of the reality of the test and that the custom model is enabled argument that's being passed, for example, on line 48, is reflected in like the config of this reality, right? Of this test scenario. So
Correct.
is your so the on your test you're calling assert called with somewhere on oh I see. Custom models enabled. So I think I
This
mean again
doesn't make.
I yeah, I don't know a lot about Python testing, but I think um asserting that uh that something was called on the mock isn't something you would normally do.
I'm guessing, at least from this understanding this test, they would lead us to believe that's the case. Is that the
Mm,
mock is already just, well, you don't need to worry about what's happening when you're calling some dependency in your test class, that
mhm.
we're just going to give, this defined value. And obviously for this one, it's like you're going to pass in the parameterized value and then don't worry about whatever happens to that mock.
Yeah,
Um,
just you want the outcome, the expected outcome of that mock, right? But
correct.
not the fact that something was called.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm just gonna there. Okay. Two failed. Let's see. Config object return value. Well, that's not gonna have anything anymore. Can I see the return value on a mock? Attribute config object has no.
Return value. But why are you trying to find the return value in your mock?
I'm trying to find the return value is because I would like to know that we have correctly set up the mock
Oh, I
object.
see.
Um, but I think looking at, this test and it's done in other sections. Let's see. Let's find some other, where mock config fixture is enabled true and then, streaming is
Yeah.
disabled.
So look for custom models, maybe in this file, the word custom models, and see what kinds of assertions there are. None.
None.
So there's no parameters. So it's not asserting anything on the config. It's what assertions are in there.
The
Just
only
the models are
things,
the streaming is disabled. I see.
yeah,
Yeah.
I I think these are mostly testing the container. So I'd like to, look at a non-container like dependency injection and more I guess here's a good one. It's like let's see what this fixture is, the registry from okay, this overrides and then it inserts the
Um,
registry. So, so base object
so
overrides the with its custom.
start registry dot prompts registered equals prompts registered.
Not to completely derail, but
Hmm.
I'm looking at most of these tests, and I'm seeing a lot of these tests are testing the config in the container, which is what we inject initially with our configuration, and few outside of this one, which I was directed to, test the API layer. which is what I'm roughly doing.
Mm,
So this one's for the doc search one, and this is what I was kind of directed to by someone else, that we're configuring, we're mocking the config in here, and we're just automatically enabling it to false.
hmm.
It's called. And the test enabled token limit, we take that and then set the mock before we
Oh.
evaluate.
And yeah, and I like one thing that I like about this, or one thing that makes sense to me, is it's testing inputs and outputs, right? It's testing this is the config and this is the response that you should get from the API endpoint, right? Which is like down,
Correct.
it's looking at the status code and the JSON. Um, that's a good, you know, high level test. It's not making any assertions about the mock. So do you think that you can do, I mean, it's hard because you're not really doing an API test, but should you be?
That's a good question. I don't think so, partly because I'm not modifying any of our changes to the API format. So nothing about like the API contract is being modified. It's
Mm-hmm.
mostly an internal service. So I don't know if that is necessarily something I can completely draw in. What I do think this does well is it says like, here's the setup, assert, action, then response,
Mm-hmm.
results, which, for most tests is exactly what you want. And I'm wondering, is there something necessarily different that's happening? I think it still comes back to, I think maybe understanding, I guess, a little bit more about mo why not evaluating a mock in the test is valid, and maybe that's something with the fixtures that I think I know a little less of. A good question.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, well, and I mean, ultimately, it is helpful to think about the high level goal here. Like, what you want in the end is for not for the config to be different, but for when the config is true or false for that custom models enabled attribute, that you're sending a different argument off to Anthropic. So, do you think that we can make an assertion on that, on what we're actually sending in our request to Anthropic? Does that
Yeah,
happen in the React agent?
yeah, this is the code section that I added. So the only time we can assert we're passing in, and we're going to send off the updated um,
Mm-hmm.
prompt caching variables
Mm-hmm.
for the model is in this case, because every time a system message should be present. There,
Yep.
it's like, well, we can check if the instance is a string, or if we can check if the instance is going to be have like a not just be a string, but a dictionary of values. I could add another assert
Got it.
clause here too.
Yeah, I feel like you also, yeah, I think the assertion you've commented out you don't need because I think this is sufficient. I think you could also add an assertion to the else statement that like that cache control is not present, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Content. So that's forget not assert not present, or there's probably some assertion adding
is there
here.
you have code suggestions on it? I should just tell you.
Uh,
Assert.
uh,
Yeah, just tab that.
Come
Oh,
on.
syncing.
Times.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
there we
Yep.
go. There we go. Assert message not in prompt.
And
The
I think
message
message or content.
odd.
That's not really right.
Yeah,
All code
no, but
suggestions. It's a good start though. Message content because you want
let's say it doesn't have the content dictionary. Let's say cache control.
message. Well, you want
So doesn't it's not an array though. It's just a string.
Isn't it reversed? I do want to say assert content hash control content. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
Though
we need some copying.
it's not going to be exactly that because the only there should be the first message is the system message in
Uh-huh.
the content, and this one, if there's nothing, then we just make it as a string purely.
Isn't there's not always a system message?
There
System prompt?
always will be a system message in here. Let's oops, what just happened? That's not true. Okay, well that's not true. I don't really trust that somehow magically it's no, I'm gonna go to the curl request. We're gonna stop there
You don't
so we can
trust your
see what.
tests?
Unfortunately, when you just add the extra block, something that's not even fully there, it's not very more confidence inspiring. So this is the system message. If we
Okay, the
scroll, okay,
question was if it's a custom model request, is there a system prompt as well?
uh, yes,
So I think you can have the same assertion as they have in the if block in the else block, but you just want to,
negate this.
yeah, you just want to negate those. And you need to define content dict also, like you do on 350.
Oops, gosh, nope, nope, nope. I don't know what just happened. Oh, that's interesting.
Like me using VS Code, I'm always like, things are happening. I don't know what.
All right, let's go back here. Let's see, I hate this. All right, well, no, let's stop that. Okay, okay, that's it. Oh, I'm doing Shift Enter instead of this. Okay.
Oh, shift enter. No,
All
too
right,
much Google Docs. Okay.
one. So let's
Are
see
you
what
trying to use
code.
code suggestions for that? I don't
Yeah,
think code suggestions is going to know what that means. Please negate this. What is this?
I'm curious to see it.
I would say transform the following two lines of code in transform the following two assertions so that they confirm that the attributes are not present. That the attributes are not present rather than present.
See what it does. Let's see if code suggestions. How this does. Hmm. See,
Yeah,
not in
it's
the
message
message.
content, but it's gonna be message content zero, right?
Just take out this. Let's
Oh,
go here.
smart. Smart. Okay. And then you want to change that to content dict because it's content dict cache control. Oh, I see. I see. Okay. I guess that makes sense.
It's gonna be a string. Though that wouldn't. Let's see. Well,
Yeah, I think maybe we 355, there would be a type, but there wouldn't be cache
yeah, that.
control. Yeah. So we can remove 355, maybe.
Yeah. Let's see. That's all right. Let's see. I don't think this. Oh no, that's not the pie test. That's just a curl request. My test. This is not. At least this is sort of not. And I would like to have a better sense of well, where exactly, and if I were to go to, well, let's
Yeah.
just test the pie test.
Well, oh, sorry. Can I make a
I
suggestion?
yes.
So, like, never trust the test that you haven't seen fail, which you already have that intuition, which is good. The way we can see this fail is remove the code that you added, or like comment out the code, not here, but in the actual like API endpoint or whatever it is, and just remove the if statement. And if it doesn't fail, then the test needs to be, yeah. And then remove all, like, no, you need to keep going. Remove the whole if statement. Like basically,
Just want that.
yeah. Yeah. So remove everything. I mean, remove lines 161 through 171 or comment it out, right? And then you would expect your test to fail. And if it doesn't, then you need help.
For instance, let's see. Prompt message should have a system message. And then, yeah, I guess this wouldn't work. Yeah, if this doesn't fail, it's not good.
This passes, then that's always the confusing. Yeah. So this
Yeah,
test, it's not
that's
getting to 350.
yeah, it's not even getting there. It's also, I guess, not even using any of the feature flag and custom model config. Okay,
Mhm.
that's
So
good.
that's good. So I would actually keep that commented out and keep working on the test until it fails and then uncommented to make it pass. You know what I mean? So you like see
Yeah.
the direct impact.
Let's see. Okay. Well, let's go see. Let's do this for one of them. Well, I actually kind of want to do just the. All right. Yeah, system message should be. There we go. Okay, it's an instance of system message. Cool. So message.content 0. All right. Well,
Hmm.
see what the message content is. Anyways. Yep.
But that's just the actual system message, right? So that's a string.
Yeah.
Um, oh, so would is feature
The,
flag enabled true? Did you already assert that?
uh, I could also just do that too here.
Yeah, check that. Or can you do that in the PDB prompt?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm,
True.
yeah.
Okay. And
Let's see.
then do mock custom models config. Test that as well. Models.
What do I even name it?
Mock custom models config.
Mhm. All right.
What was
This
that?
is okay. This is okay. Well,
So then not that, because you're in your test assertion, if you go and look at the actual test, um, if you look at the test in the code, you're asserting not that, but that is present, right? Must custom models config is like an object or something. So I think that might be the problem, the mock custom models config.
still enabled. There we go.
Ah, so you need to do dot enabled on 351.
And
Mm,
there we go. So it's getting the mocks value. Okay.
what is that labeled telling you? Doesn't like that.
It's saying, let's see, why is it not? I don't know.
I would hover over it. I would scroll left, scroll left, and then hover over the light bulb. It should give you hover over the light bulb. The light bulb.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, the light bulb.
Add type annotations for all fixture references in this file. Hmm. Okay.
See what it did to add a reference. Hmm. I don't know exactly what it did.
Okay. Oh shoot, I have to run. I told myself I would eat lunch at a reasonable hour today. But Ethan,
Thank you.
you're very close. You're very close. I don't think I
I
helped you get any closer, but you're already there.
Well, I did appreciate this as much for the you know, rubber ducking of what the heck am I able to explain what I'm doing, even though I roughly know what's going on, just not exactly, I guess, super confident about dependency injection and setting up tests in Python, which is part of the goal. So this is what
Yeah,
this is doing.
you're doing great. You did a great job, and I didn't know these concepts either, so I would not be able to help you at all. And so I appreciate you bringing me along for the ride.
Well,
I'm
that's the part of
inspired.
this. The the debugging is like share something someone else may not have any understanding. So yeah, it was fun.
Okay. Okay, well, keep me updated on how this goes. And if you figure out why this wasn't working, tell me, and
Yeah.
I'll upload this recording.
Yeah. One quick thing is, do you mind if I see the recording too, just to make sure I redact anything that in case anything got like seen that wasn't supposed to be seen? Because I don't think
Yeah.
there is much.
No, there's nothing. I mean, and this is also your test environment, so it wouldn't be anything. But I can upload it as private initially, and then we can change it.
Yep. Sounds great.
Okay. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Sophie.
Nathan.